Hello, Tube Hero here. Today I'd like to talk about some Gears of Dreadland Demon Hunter builds I'm using for farming in Season 22 of Diablo 3. Now, a quick disclaimer, there are a lot of variations that you can do, and some of them might even be better for you than what I'm doing, and I might even come up with things that work better for me later. In fact, Gears of Dreadlands is a build I used quite a bit last season, and I've already changed pretty much every variant that I've done during this 1 week that I've been playing Demon Hunter this season. So I'd already had lots of experience with it, but even I am coming up with things I like better kind of on the fly as I move through this season. So that's why I waited a week before I made this video. This is stuff that I'm preferring right now. It might change in the future, but it all definitely works. Alright, so this is what I'm using for T16 Rift running, now that I'm at higher Paragon and have a good ancient weapon and everything. Usually I would start off with Focus and Restraint if I'm playing GOD early season, and then eventually swap it out so I can incorporate Retchels. I do have Chance to Fear on a Helm, so that really synergizes well, because the ring itself has a pretty small chance, but between them it's a little bit bigger. Always use Yangs for any super speed content because of their resource cost reduction, and then try and get to at least 37% cooldown on between everything. Right now I'm at about 40, so that is plenty. But if you happen to have it on, say, a ring, you could roll another 10 RCR instead on your Yangs, so that you're just able to super spam all your stuff. I did hear somebody in my chat mention that they're using Captain Crimsons with this, so that would be a little bit less damage because I'm right now incorporating Depth Diggers, or let me show it here so you can see pictures. Depth Diggers for doubling the damage, but basically you would remove that and get however much damage you get out of the cooldown, which would typically be around 50% with most Captain Crimson builds. So you would only be going from 200% down to 150. It's not as big of a damage loss as I would have thought, and you would get an extra 20% RCR as well. So it would make it really easy to spam all of your spenders. But anyway, non-season, I would just be using the Ring of Royal Grandeur to wear the Depth Diggers and have pretty much full power while using these two rings. But this season, with the extra slot, I didn't really have much to do with that extra slot because it's so good on its own. So I started off with Mantle there while I still had pretty bad gear and low Simplicity Strength and low Dex and everything. Was using Mantle of Channeling for a little bit of extra constant damage. I guess you could also do Hexing Pants because you don't need the toughness with Gold Wraps, so I didn't really think about that at the time. I think that is additive though. Not that I have much for additive damage since I don't use Taeguk for rifts. But yeah, Hexing Pants might be a thing if you have a 40% Yangs and you want a little bit more resource generation, but eventually you'll want to switch it to something more utility-wise. So I then switched it to Warzekians because you blow stuff up very constantly, so that was a very frequent 50% movement speed boost. But I was talking to somebody in chat and they were mentioning their gold skin on their build for Necro, and I was like, oh, I was planning on putting gold skin, replace my LOD Wave of Light eventually, replace the Cinder Coat when I got to higher Dex, and then I realized, oh wait, I could just put the Depth Diggers in this 4th slot and use that for my rifting. So right now I'm at almost 34,000% gold find, and that is really good, especially considering they dropped the 50% from Paragon. I don't know if I've ever actually had a functional rifting build with this much. Like, obviously for puzzle rings, there's a lot less damage requirement or anything requirement, so you could just stack gold find in every single slot about and go, get lots of gold. But for rifts, this is probably the most I've ever had on a T16 functional build. So going over the skills quick, we've got Dark Heart just for extra toughness when we don't have gold up yet. We got Displacement for an extra movement speed boost for 1 second. Got Shadow Glide for 5 seconds of even more movement speed. It also gives you life per hit, but hopefully we never have to use that. This is more discipline than the other runes, and it's on a delay, but it's not like you could be spamming it every 5 seconds. So you might as well take this one because it's overall more. Shatter Shot, the lightning rune, so lightning nems, lightning squirts, is by far the best for a super speed farm situation because it just covers so much of the screen so quickly compared to Devouring Arrow. That takes a long time. Drifting Shadow for more movement speed. Passives, I got Tactical Advantage, I got Blood Vengeance. This is even more over redundant, refilling, constantly topping out our resources. And Ambush, just a little more damage. If I felt like I really don't need that, and maybe I'll try it without it this time, can go Hot Pursuit for more movement speed when you hit things. So we'll try that. I can just swap it back if it feels too weak. But I do have 14.4k dex, so that's about the same amount as if you're like 1,000 dex with full augs, but I wouldn't recommend auging a speed farm build. I would just pick up some more offense somewhere, like the focus and restraint combo, or more offensive passives maybe, because you could probably get by without Blood Vengeance. You could also go emeralds in your gear. If you're low Paragon, that's a lot of extra damage. Like if you only have 7,000 or 8,000 dex, then adding 1,000 dex is a huge jump. But for me right now, where I already have 14.5k, it's not that big a deal. So this way I just have less chance of proccing while my gold is down. We're using the Avarice Band, Boon of the Hoarder, and Gold Wrap combo with Squirts and Wildebeest Gizzards. So we basically don't take any damage once we start picking up gold. So that means this could be a rank 25 Gizzard, and we'd always have double damage from our Squirts. This is just happens. It'll just always throw in the highest one I have, though. So I have a ranked up one for GR farming on Monk. So that's what I'm using. But you could literally do this exactly the same with a rank 25. So when you're rift farming on this build, you can charge up your momentum before you go in. And that includes when you open it originally, and you have to wait for like the rift to open that. It's almost the exact same amount of time for it to open as it is to get to 20 stacks. So on other builds, I would use that time, like I'd click open next rift, and I'd go salvage some stuff while it's opening, so I'm not wasting time. But on this build, you actually use that time. Like you can click open rift and then use that time to get to 20, go in, and then you're full of momentum to hit the ground running. Now, as you can see, we are killing things super duper fast. Ultimately, this build really benefits if you're actually skipping all the drops, because like you can move so fast and just grab the orbs and gold and move on. Other builds like Wave of Light, I think, have an easier time getting to the drops like instantly and then moving on than Whirlwind or this, because of how fast this is moving and gliding and such. So I think if there gets to be a point where I don't want any drops, like you could save a lot of time on these rifts. Now, you might have noticed I'm using canes in my inventory, but I couldn't fit it in and actually kill anything. And that's just because Season 22, you get the Shadow Clone, so I'm using it on LOD Wave of Light, and I'm definitely using it on this build. But on this build, I only need 2 there because it's a Ring of Royal Grandeur build. So I've got 5 pieces of God. I swapped 2 of them out for canes. And then I've got 3-piece canes for the boss. If I get a pylon, and we got a pylon, a shrine would work just as well. So as long as I spawn the boss before I leave this floor, I will have a clone for the boss. And we did. And on the Demon Hunter, the clone is amazing. Like they're ranged and they very quickly target the boss. Now only 3 keys drop, but you can see I have the full cane set bonus. So each of those 3 keys had 25% chance of dropping an extra key. If 4 drop, 25% on each of them. So you get an average of 25% more keys. And I would say about half the time, if not more, you have a shrine or you have a clone for the boss. You basically get 12.5% more keys, even though your build wasn't altered at all to use canes. It's just, you just keep them in your inventory and throw them on when the Rift Guardian spawns. If there was a shrine there, you get basically an average of like 12.5% more keys. Fun fact, I've gotten 7 keys like 3 times this season already, but I've not gotten 8 keys. It's about 50% chance of you getting 4 instead of 3, and then 1 in 4 on each of those 4 keys to get an extra key. So it's like 1 2 times 4 is 8, 1 in 32, 1 in 128, 1 in 512 chance for a given Rift Guardian to drop you 8 keys instead of 3 or 4 if you have canes on. So maybe I haven't done 512 rifts, or maybe I've been unlucky. Who knows? And for bounties, I just call this easy bounty build. It was one of the first builds I set up this season. Again, if you don't have enough damage to do this, with Retchels incorporated, you could just do focus and restraint and have way more damage. But I'm using Retchels and Rorg to pick up the depth diggers, and it's just fine. It's also, I call it easy bounty because it's got an insane amount of damage reduction. I'm using Elusive Ring as well as Mantle of Channeling, so between that is a ton. Like way overkill for T16 bosses, hopefully. Although still, like, if I was walking into a multi-health fight, I might try and throw on some extra toughness somewhere if I could. Thinking about it, though, there's not really that much to quickly swap in. You could obviously swap a passive for Perfectionist or Numbing Traps maybe even. Not sure if I have anything that would proc that, but I guess you could throw on a Fan Knives quick. That's probably overkill, though. It would make more sense just to throw on a Greater Rift build that's even tankier to go fight Malthael if you were worried about it. So anyway, we got the Warzekians. I don't really see a need for Nems. If you want more DBs, you could take it, but I don't use... don't need Injam, so I'm just going for the extra bit of movement speed. Basically, this is just for extra tankiness on bosses and just for extra damage when you have a lower overall damage number. Definitely don't need gold wrap for this because we're actually going to be missing most of the gold. I've got Boon of the Hoarder, but I'm not, and gold wrap, but I'm not going to be doing Avarice Band for bounties. That's because I feel like most of the time you're just moving straight forward, not trying to stay in an area, not trying to pick things up. So most of the gold would actually fall behind even the 30-yard radius, but you also have to pick up a bunch of gold to get to 30-yard radius. I just don't see the need. Although if you wanted to collect a lot more gold while you do bounties, you could find a way to fit that in. Maybe drop the Retchels or the Mantle of Channeling or whatever. So at some point, I might see about dropping that for something else. Nothing's really coming to mind that I want right now, though, so I'm just going to stick with the super simple bounty build. Probably have too much damage, so I don't need ambush anymore, but definitely would recommend it if you're killing things a little on the slower side. So we'll throw in Hot Pursuit here as well. There it is. I, again, have my Fear Helm and my Fear Ring, so pretty good chance to fear for the Retchels. I don't have any sockets on my Death Diggers in favor of just getting Hungering Arrow on these, but they came with all res, so that's almost as good as the 2 diamonds, if we were to have a bad roll there. But I mostly loved these for Rifts just because they came with the max gold already, so it was like the best of everything that really mattered, which is the Hungering Arrow and the Generator and the gold for Rifts. But again, here I'm not really going to be picking it up. So let's just find what act I need the most of. It looks like it is Act 1. So here's a quick round of bounties, of 1 act of bounties. Go to... Ooh, I'll pick up pools, though. Not really caring about gold, but pools, heck yeah. So ideally, you can click the doors. Every once in a while, I will stop just to make sure I got some gold, but really, between the Mantle of Channeling and the Elusive, I don't need gold wrap for this. I barely need it for anything. Like, if I can kill the bosses without it, I probably don't need it for the trash that I'm running by. What I do love gold wrap for, though, between Vengeance and gold wrap, is if you are untying somebody or doing anything that requires your character just standing around, you can either A, kill everything in the area and everything that might walk into the area, which is annoying, because usually you forget about one thing and then they come over and throw a spear at you and it's super bad. Or you can just be CC immune and also basically damage immune, and then you can just untie them right the instant you get there, and that's what I prefer. So that's why I like having the gold wrap, especially without Avarice Band, because it means that I get gold until my pet is done picking up gold. So the delay actually helps for that. Actually, when it used to be hard to get the Avarice and Avaricia conquests, I preferred doing them without an Avarice Band. For that reason, because you could trickle in the gold over time as you decided, okay, is there any more stuff on this floor or not, and whether you need to make it to the next floor. So instead of picking it all up, every piece of gold that drops instantly, you could delay that so that you always have the longest amount of time that this number is still refreshed. It just got refreshed again, sort of thing. So we're using the Shatter Shot, Lightning Runes, Boon of the Hoarder for its extra movement speed, but it also is a little bit of extra gold. Another goblin. Ideally, I don't really pick up stuff, but if there's multiple legendaries, like a Malevolent Tormentor will have, or if stuff is right on top of me, then I'll try and pick it up. But generally, I think picking up stuff is for bounties, or for greater rifts, and early season for rifts, but I might not be doing that later in the season, my rifts. And bounties are for just doing the bounties. Gonna go kill a boss. This is a good test of damage. So if you basically can kill Queen Erine very, very quickly, like have a lot of real quick damage, you can save a lot of time, like 5 or 10 seconds, or I don't know how long she actually disappears for, but probably don't have that much damage. We'll see. I do have almost 16,000 dex with this build. Actually, 2 of the items, when I went to go put it on for this video, 2 of the items were salvaged because they were not my best items and I'd gotten rid of them a while ago. So I just replaced them with other stuff from what I was wearing in my Greater Rift version. Easy one shot. So I have a lot more. I think I've got like an Ogged chest, and I threw on just this old primal, poorly rolled mechanical pauldrons. So yeah, way easier to one shot when you got that extra dex. Then we just go to this cursed chest. Now I don't really do this, but a smart way to run bounties, if you're on your last act in particular, is to look for those cursed ones and start with them or do them earlier than the last. Because if it's not a wave one, but the one where you have like 40-something seconds to defeat 100 enemies, you can just leave and come back. So if it's your final one, like I'm not planning on doing the other acts, and you could be leaving and saving yourself 30 seconds, and instead you have to fight it all, like that was a waste of 30 seconds. So ideally you would just like quickly scan and be like, well, maybe this takes too long. Kill Magda, kill a Tome Keeper, Cursed Archive, and you would go there right away. Cursed Glacier, go there right away. So that looks like it takes just a few seconds, and it might save 30. So it's probably a wash, really. Let's see, we got like a Primal Ring of Royal Grandeur. Nope. Alright, for Greater Rift, experience, and also to an extent, augment level farming, this is the build I would recommend for early season, low Paragon type of thing, because it's way easier to keep up your squirts than the other build I'm about to show will be. So this build, right now, I'm doing 107s in about 2 to 3 minutes. Sometimes they're over 3, sometimes they're under 2, but they're generally between 2 to 3 minutes, so probably 2.5 minutes on average. In past seasons, I would always try and farm slower than that, so I would be doing like 108s at a little bit less Paragon maybe, and they would be about 3.5 minutes, because I didn't really feel like I locked into a good fast run, but something about this version of the build for some reason, I actually feel like I'm getting a good 2.5 minute time. Now, I think it would make more sense to farm higher when I get all the augment gems I want, because right now I have a 95, 100, 110, a 107, and that's it for my extra augment gems. I've got speed farm stuff on my monk that's not fully ogged, on my barb that's not fully ogged, and other gear on this character that I would like to aug. So right now I don't want to be doing 3.5 minute runs. I want to be doing faster stuff. So that's why I'm doing 107s rather than like 109s or 110s or something, even though you could do them in a reasonable amount of time. But for this build, we're using Fortress Ballista, which gives us a shield on every hit. It can be 2 to 3%. If you've got an over tanky build like this, you could get by with the 2%. You could get by with a lower amount of vitality. But basically, the lower it is, if your shields are dropping all the time, then you need to just raise your vitality. If you got 3k vitality, and you were to add 1,500 to that, then you've got 50% bigger shields than you used to have. So it's very modifiable if you've got a reasonable amount of Paragon, so you can have at least like 1,000 or 2,000 to fluctuate on your Paragon. Otherwise, you'd have to change stuff on gear, which is a much bigger pain to roll. Some of this stuff, like obviously I only rolled that to 44 because I found it a long time ago, I think. But some of this gear is better than others. Most of it's really good though, because I've been fortunate in this week of farming. Did a lot of super speeds. I already, on my last video, showed the 1 to 2 minute GR90 build. Right now I'm doing 91s with it. And every once in a while I do get an under 1 minute run with it. So earlier I was doing a lot of super speed farming, but I think now I'm at the point where I just want to spend all my time in this 2.5 minutes or longer range, because it's better like key to GR time efficiency wise. So I am wearing a Dawn, and it's almost got enough cooldown to counteract the fact that I only rolled 60%, Generally, if your Dawn rolls low enough, you just shouldn't wear it. You should just wear a Fortress Ballista and a Quiver. But also, if your Quiver sucks, then that's not really an option either, right? So those are kind of the 2 points. If you got a good Quiver, then maybe you wear that. If you got a good Dawn, maybe you wear that. Ultimately, I think two hand crossbows has more damage potential, assuming you can get enough cooldown and everything out of your stuff. You want to have good base damage. 10% damage is nice for speed farming, or if I were to wear a Quiver. Originally, I thought I was going to be wearing a Quiver on this, but for speed farming, definitely like 10% damage over area damage. I was using a different Fortress Ballista until today, but this one has that max shields, whereas my old one had 2.7% somewhere. Yeah, so this one has just a hair more damage, 2%, but the difference between a 2.7% shield and a 3% shield is about 11%. So if I gain 2% damage, but with this one I can gain 11% of shields, I'm probably going to have a lot more squirts uptime. And also the resource cost reduction means less time worrying about running out of hatred between floors, which isn't a huge problem, but it's enough of a problem that I was like, yeah, I'll take the 2% damage loss and switch to this Fortress Ballista, which had amazing base damage, but the RCR roll isn't that good, and also amazing shields. It's very, very comfortable for farming with those rolls. For the rings, you should go for crit average damage if you can, preferably on an ancient. This is basically a perfect ring. Gloves, crit is really important. Get cooldown where you need it, and then no more often than that. If you already had enough cooldown, let's say that you have it on your shoulders and you easily got it on weapons where it wasn't even like wasting a good slot, then Vitality would actually be a good roll as a third roll for gloves, because you don't really need area damage for speed farming, and that's less Vitality that you need from Paragon to keep your shields up, to keep your squirts up. So maybe there's a point where you can actually keep it up just fine with like 3,000 Paragon because you got so much armor and all res on gear, but I'm nowhere near that point yet, so I would appreciate like Vitality rolls on the places like instead of the RCR here. Anyway, so Vitality is good, Dex is good, all res is good. These boots would be better if they had all res. So far I've gotten one pair like that later that I'm saving as just my push boots only, and these ones I use for speed farming. Dex, either Vitality or all res and Hungering Arrow. So if you get Dex, Vit, and a single res and Hungering Arrow, that's pretty darn good. But if you have enough main stat, like let's say you're 5k Paragon, you're definitely going to be better off with all res, because 600 Vitality is nothing when you've got 5k Paragon. Similar here, percent life and all res are better than Vitality, but if you can only pick for, like, if you can't get all res and percent life, these are probably the best 5 possible rolls you can get. Dex, Vit, percent life, Hungering Arrow, Phys res. Now, I know some people will think like percent life is way worse than all res because you can always just throw extra life into your pool with Vitality, but all res and percent life are both separate multipliers when your recovery and your shields scale with your life pool. So you can't get more percent life from your Paragon after this point of 25%, and you can't get more all res from your Paragon after this point of 250, and one's a percent and one is a number, but it all functions the same in that, like, if you add, like, let's say you have 10,000 Vitality, if you add a certain amount of percent life, it'll raise that up. If you add a certain amount of all res, it'll make that tankier. So on like shoulders, I could roll this Vitality to percent life, and then that would be the tankiest 2 possible rolls, would be all res and percent life. I don't typically run with enough Vitality that percent life is better, but if I was on a squishy build and wanted to have like 7k Vitality, then I would roll this to percent life and it would give me more of a health pool. Like, typically you don't need to stack more than 2 rolls of percent life, but that's just like it. There would eventually be a point where it would be better. Anyway, get as many crits as you can get. Don't really worry about area damage for speed farming, but the longer it takes you to kill things, the more area damage helps, because things will have a chance to group together, and that is the thing that makes area damage worth, is when things are actually grouped together for a long period of time. We're going cold, Devouring Arrow for GRs. I'm going a lot of defense. I'm going bladed armor, Boar Companion, I'm going Mandal, Channeling, Elusive. This is just overkill at this point, because last season I just ran basically all this stuff, but without the Mantle. So, like, super duper overkill. And I got, like, I should never drop squirts, basically. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and take this last 500 out of my Paragon Vitality. Should never be an issue. So, we got almost 20,000 decks. We should be able to just demolish this 107 with all these defensive multipliers and never drop squirts. But, you know, if you get hit by something big, it'll still drop squirts. But anyway, hopefully this will be 2 to 3 minutes like it had been all of yesterday. Maybe even faster because I just put in some more decks. But maybe not, because maybe I'll drop squirts now. We'll see. Oh, wait. Passives. So, last season when I was doing these slower, I was just going with like full offensive passives basically. I did awareness, but I did Thrill of the Hunt to slow everything so I could proc Trapped and Call of the Week. And Ambush, I think. And I was just moving slow, but killing consistently. And it seemed like even if I raised the difficulty to a much higher tier, I was still killing about the same speed. So it was basically just like, you're going to clear every rift slowly, but you're going to clear every rift, even a higher rift, relatively fast. So that's what I was doing. I was getting a little frustrated with that this season because I kept having things like running out of hatred on the ends of floors, having pylon spawn on the end of floors, so no clone help, and all that stuff. And for some reason, adding tactical advantage just made it feel a lot better. So that's how I'm getting the 2 to 3 minute runs, is partially from adding tactical advantage. I am using Vanishing Powder, so this is on a cooldown now. So you'll see the Elusive is basically halfway done, and I could spam it again. So pretty much no risk of ever running out. It's not harming my essence or my discipline, so that's why I don't need preparation on the bar anymore. Pick up even more defense. And also I'm using Rocket Storm. Now, there's just occasionally, there's times that you could be firing out an extra Hungering Arrow, like an automatically fired one, but because of internal cooldowns of like, it's been this many, I don't know, milliseconds since the last one could go out, but you aren't going to be shooting another enemy with strafe yet, so one won't go out until the next one gets counted. The rockets that go out actually can fill in those gaps, so you do get a few extra Hungering Arrows if you run Rocket Storm instead of Drifting Shadow, assuming that you're not doing something else that fills in those gaps. So I think Bariza, definitely Valas can fill in those gaps too, but you can't do that plus Rocket Storm. So if you are pushing with Valas, I would suggest swapping this back to Drifting Shadow so that you can move even faster while you're pushing, because you probably won't have any other movement speed boosts anyway, so that'll just be the GOD nice movement speed boost. Anyway, here's a 107. So we go in, get our momentum up. Terrible map. Like, anytime you have walls around, it really hurts your DPS. But that was a real nice, quick S of Johann pull by the Templar. And it looks like a good mob type, so should be a good run. So right now I can use this Oculus, and this is a thing that I get out of running with Thrill of the Hunt. If you run without it, still anything that you're on top of, like right now I'm on top of this Wretched Mother, you still get Bane of the Trapped, which gives you Cold of the Week as well. And anything you hit with Fan of Knives, you have it for a little bit because that slows. But I want to be able to have it up whether I'm on top of enemies or across the room on Oculus, or just trying to stay away from their dangerous attacks. So when I'm farming, I use Thrill of the Hunt. So that was a very short Corvus. Short and rewarding. Surprise. Now we got another kind of mediocre map with the Eternal Woods. Or maybe this is that other newer one. But I always just kind of call them both Eternal Woods. It's kind of annoying because of the trees that get in the way, but so far everything's kind of been out in the hallway, so that's fine. I feel like with that extra 5% or 500 dex, that my kill speed is faster than it was before, even though that's only a few percent damage. Could just be like nice grouping. And the fact that I hit record on a video feels different. Not as brain dead. By the way, I am holding down shift, which is my forced standstill, and I'm also holding down strafe constantly. When I first played GOD, I was letting go of strafe and then hitting forced standstill and firing my generator when I want to. And then somebody turned me on to the fact that you can just hold down for standstill and strafe constantly. Unless you go to click a pylon, then I release it. But generally, and then anytime you hit your generator, it will stop you automatically to fire the generator. So you don't have to worry about actually selecting an enemy or releasing strafe. It just works. And we have a clone and a Hamelin, so this will be a fast boss kill. That was 215. Alright, just gonna think for a bit, see if I forgot anything. So yeah, obviously that was really fast speed farming for GOD, like not the 1 to 2 minute 91 plus I can do with the shatter shot, but pretty fast. Here I'm going to be doing a slightly slower version. Actually uses all the same skills, I think, but this is generally, I swapped out elusive for COE, and I think I can get away with it now because I have the extra damage reduction from manual channeling. There was no time last season though where I was farming where I picked up COE, even though I know other people did. I was just like, but then the squirts will drop off too much, but I think it'll be fine now, especially since I got maxed Fortress Ballista, and I had this saved as 3k vitality 110 because dropping elusive, in order to have any squirts uptime, I wanted to throw in 3000 vitality into my Paragon. This is not really possible when you don't have 3000 vitality in your Paragon to work with. And also, if you're low Paragon and you don't have that much dex, just swapping out all your dex for vitality, you're going to be left with like no armor. So here I still have 12 even before I put any Paragon to dex, just because of Augs and good gear. I've got 12,400 dexterity. And basically only 10,000 armor between all of my gear and stuff. So a lot of my armor is coming from my dex, which will now go up even more. So you can see here about 86% damage reduction. To about 89% damage reduction. And if you don't know how damage reduction works as a multiplier, you might think, wow, you went from 86 to 89? That's only 3%. Or if it was like an offensive multiplier, you'd think diminishing returns because you're going from 186 to 189. But on damage reduction, it works the opposite. You get exponentially more the closer you get to 100. So, in fact, that basically gave me 25% damage reduction, right? Maybe not exactly, but if it was actually 3% going from 14, well, I can just do the math there. 3 divided by 14 is 21.4% damage reduction from that dexterity. Dexterity. It's not just for damage. But there was some rounding and stuff in there, so it was probably closer to 20% and not exactly 21.4. But anyway, lots and lots of damage reduction. And that's why a lot of builds that you see on the leaderboard for pushing, where somebody's got like 4 or 5k Paragon, you're like, man, that's weird. Whenever I do this, I die all the time. It's because they can just have all that extra armor. And also, if they wanted to just throw 5,000 into Vitality, if you've already got like 40,000 main stat, that's not really a big deal. So they could have twice the health pool and also take half as much per attack. That's crazy. So if a build is squishy, it's not always best to copy it directly for a push build. So anyway, since we have the better shields, I'm going to swap this to a 2,000 vitality and see how it goes. So way easier to drop my squirts since I don't have elusive anymore. I am still sticking with the vanishing powder. I just like not having to rely on preparation, like having it always be available as a way to avoid all damage. And let's go 111 instead of 110 now. So this is a higher farming build. Definitely much more viable the more Paragon you get. Because if I was 3 or 4 or 5,000 Paragon, then dropping a few thousand dex for Vitality is not a big deal at all. And also I wouldn't need to drop as much because I'd have more armor. So it's just like a rich get richer thing when it comes to Paragon, and like being able to do higher tiers is like, not only do you kill things faster because you have more damage, not only do you have easier access to more health because you can just throw some damage into Vitality, more dex into Vitality, but it affects you less because it's a smaller proportion of your overall dex pool. So yeah, having a massive amount of Paragon is kind of broken when it comes to any kind of toughness. So we are hopefully getting to elites on cold rotation. That's the whole point of bringing the COE. I saw right there I didn't have squirts up for a bit of that. If I'm at least having squirts up for the regular trash, then it is okay. But right there, I just dropped it again. If I like have cold up but squirts down, it's still better than just squirts on its own. So in that sense, it's okay. But if I really reliably can't have squirts up during the GR, then I need more vitality. So right now, just having it drop that few times, I would probably throw in another 500, and then if that doesn't work, another 500. I just engaged the yellow, so I was looking for it, but I don't see it. It must have been that first room. Until I get to a number where I feel like most mob types are not dropping my squirts. There's some particularly nasty ones that probably still will, and I'll hate those floors. But generally, I don't want to be dropping squirts, even without Elusive Ring. Otherwise, I would just run a different build or add in more vitality. Great floor. Ooh, not great mobs. So this is working out pretty well. Another thing you can do is be like, oh, in 8 seconds I've got cold coming up. Let's see if I can find a second elite or something. Or, you know, just because you're moving, you're more likely to maintain the squirts. The longer you stand in one place, the more likely you are to take damage and lose squirts. So that's why, like, just zipping past an elite and coming back on cold, you're more likely to have kept it up the whole time. On the other hand, there I just wasted it. But we got power now, so we'll be good for a while. Obviously not a flavor time build, so just 30 seconds of power, but that should be enough to get through this whole floor. Now we got power and cold. They're gone. Should have power for boss, I would think. If not, we have 2 clones now. Definite squirts up time. Probably kill a binder before cold even comes up. Yeah, that was like a 3-second boss kill. So it was just over 3 minutes. Oh, it's a new PB because the highest I'd done until now was 110. Not a super good rift, but getting good pylons on a big map really helps out. So even if I just got like a channeling at the door, having an extra clone to finish off elites and help a bit all the way through battlefields, tremendous help. So you can get some slow times this season just by having bad pylon placements, and that's unfortunate, but you can also save a lot of time by having good ones. It also means that if you have like 5 floors of small maps, you're probably not going to get a super fast time just because clones can't really carry through that in that scenario. Now we get all these 100% chances. Nice. So yeah, this is probably what I'll use later in the season for all of my XP farming, is some version with COE. You know, maybe I'll just go elusive in COE instead of mantle, but I feel like it wouldn't take that much of my overall main stat pool at this point and definitely in the future. And this is 25% more damage. So if I can maintain with just dropping a few thousand dex, then that's definitely going to be more damage. On the other hand, elusive, way simpler and way more toughness. So that's probably a better thing early season.